Hello and welcome to my video where I will show you how to do the SSK and SSSK decrease techniques. The SSK is a single decrease, which means that the number of stitches on your needles goes down by 1. It's also a left-leaning decrease. Because it's left-leaning, you might find it very often paired with a right-leaning decrease on the same row. The most popular right-leaning single decrease is the K2 tog, and so you'll often find the K2 tog and SSK decreases paired up on the same row. Pairing up left-leaning and right-leaning decreases like this adds that extra level of symmetry and neatness to your work. As a beginner, don't worry about this because you'll most likely be following patterns and this kind of thing is already worked out for you. It's just something to be aware of. Okay, so let's get started. SSK stands for slip one, and then knit both together. And it's actually quite an easy method. You might notice I'm using circular needles here, but don't worry, I'm just flat knitting, and you can use normal straight needles for this. I'm going to be doing stockinette stitch, so I'm going to be alternating between knit rows and purl rows, and I'm going to be doing all the SSK and SSSK decreases on the knit row. There are actually quite a few variations of the SSK that I've seen. The traditional way, and what seems to be the most popular way, is the first one I'm going to show you. And then I'm going to show you a few more I've seen, and then you can pick your favourite basically. The result is the same, they're all left-leaning and they're all single decreases. However, in appearance, they're all very slightly different. So it would be a good idea to try them all and see which one you like the look of best, and which one you find easiest. If you don't want to watch all of the different variations of SSK, feel free to watch the first method and stick with that one, as that is the most popular. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just knit a normal knit stitch. Now throughout all of the SSKs, I'm going to be keeping the yarn at the back behind the needles. Okay, so for an SSK, you take your right hand needle and go up through the top stitch on the left hand needle, as if you were going to knit it. But instead of knitting it, you then just slip that stitch off the top of the left hand needle. You then repeat that, so you go up through the top stitch on the left hand needle as if to knit, but instead you just slip that stitch off the top. This is called slipping the stitch knitwise. The process of slipping stitches is only to twist or untwist your stitches. And then you take your left hand needle down through those two slip stitches you've just transferred to the right hand needle. So you take your needle down the front of those two stitches, cross the needles, and then just knit a normal knit stitch, except you're knitting 2 stitches together. And the result is 1 stitch on the right hand needle when you started with 2 on the left, therefore making it a single decrease. I'm now going to do 1 normal knit stitch before showing you another variation. All the SSK variations I'm going to show you are very similar in method, but they all have very slightly different appearances. And this one seems quite popular because it most closely mirrors the K2 tog decrease technique. So if you're doing an SSK on the same row as a K2 tog decrease and you value symmetry, then this is the SSK variation for you. With the yarn at the back, you take your right hand needle and go up through the top stitch on the left hand needle, as if you're going to knit it. But instead of knitting it, you just slip that stitch off the needle, which is the same as the previous method I showed you. However, for the next stitch, we're going to slip the stitch purlwise instead of knitwise. So to do that, you keep the yarn at the back and you take your right hand needle down through the top stitch on the left hand needle, as if you're going to purl it. But instead of purling it, you just slip that stitch off. So you now have 2 slip stitches on the right hand needle, 1 slipped knitwise and 1 slipped purlwise. The last step is exactly the same as the previous method, where you take the left hand needle down through those 2 slip stitches, through the front of the loops, cross the needles, and then just knit those 2 stitches together. And now I'm just going to do 1 regular knit stitch before showing you the next method. I haven't seen this particular method done myself, however apparently it is a method, and I've tried it and it does work. With this method you're going to slip both the stitches purlwise. So with the yarn at the back, you take your right hand needle and go down through the top stitch on the left hand needle as if you're going to purl it. But instead of purling it, you just slip that stitch off onto the right hand needle. And then you repeat that again. So now you have 2 stitches that have been slipped purlwise. And then you simply knit these 2 stitches together. So you take your left hand needle down through those 2 stitches and then just basically do a regular knit stitch and knit those 2 slip stitches together. So that's method number 3. One thing to note about an SSK is that all the methods so far involve a twisted stitch, and this next method tries to prevent that twisting in order to make a smoother, neater SSK. So to do this one, which I'm going to call a modified SSK, you're going to slip the first stitch knitwise. So put your right hand needle up through the top stitch on the left hand needle as if to knit, and then just slip that stitch off. Now the next stitch is slightly more complicated because we're going to slip it again, but we're going to slip it as if to purl through the back of the loop. So to do this I'm going to turn my work over, and what you're going to do is take your right hand needle up through that stitch on the left hand needle. Like so. So you go up through that top stitch through the back of the loop. And then you're going to cross that right hand needle in front of the left and then just slip that stitch off the top of the needle. And then you're going to knit those 2 slip stitches together. So once again, take your left hand needle down through those 2 stitches, cross the needles and knit them together. So that is 4 different ways of doing the SSK. Normally when you do a line of SSKs, they have a kind of wobbly, or at least not a uniform appearance. If you want to neaten out your SSKs and just make them smoother, then you can do something on the next line of your work, which is what I'm going to show you now. Since I'm doing stockinette stitch, this next row is a purl row. So I'm going to have the yarn at the front and purl up to where I did the last SSK on the previous row. Now this first SSK I come across, which on the previous row was the modified SSK, I don't need to do anything because it's already untwisted. However, I'm just going to demonstrate what you would do if it was just a normal unmodified SSK. So just pretend this is a normal SSK and this is what you would do. Rather than just doing a normal purl stitch, which is probably what you would normally do, you're going to purl through the back of the loop instead. And this will untwist your SSK and make it lie smoother and neater. So to purl through the back of the loop, I'm going to turn my work over so you can see more clearly. And then I'm going to take my right hand needle up through that top stitch on the left hand needle, so that the needle goes through the back of the loop. Then the right hand needle crosses in front of the left hand needle, and you just complete a normal purl stitch. And that's all there is to it. So wherever you come across an SSK that you did on the previous line, you just purl through the back of the loop rather than do a normal purl stitch. So I'm just going to do another purl stitch and I'll come across the next SSK I did. This is the one I did by slipping the 2 stitches purlwise. So once again I'm going to purl through the back of the loop. I then do another regular purl stitch before coming across the SSK I did on the previous row, where I slipped a stitch knitwise and then slipped a stitch purlwise. So once again, I purl through the back of the loop. As a side note, if you are circular knitting, i.e. knitting in the round, then on this second row, you would knit through the back of the loops when you get to the SSKs, rather than purl through the back of the loops. That's if you're circular knitting. Flat knitting, you purl through the back of the loop. Circular knitting, you knit through the back of the loop. And then we get to the very first SSK I did, which is where I slipped both stitches knitwise, and I purl through the back of the loop again. And that is how you smooth out SSKs on the next row. And now I'm just going to show you how to do an SSSK, which stands for slip stitch, slip stitch, slip stitch, and then knit those three together. This is very similar to the SSK as you would imagine, but we're dealing with 3 slip stitches rather than 2. So I'm just on a knit row again, so the yarn's at the back, and I just slip 3 stitches knitwise. So I take the right hand needle up through the top stitch on the left hand needle, as if I were to knit it, but instead I just slip that stitch off. I then take my left hand needle down through those 3 slip stitches on the right hand needle, just pushing that needle down through the front of the loops, crossing the needles, and then basically doing a regular knit stitch but with 3 stitches. So I'm just knitting those 3 stitches together. This results in 1 stitch on the right hand needle when you started with 3 on the left hand needle, therefore making it a double decrease, i.e. you're reducing the number of stitches by 2. As with the SSK, this decrease is left leaning, and if it's going to be paired with another decrease, it would be paired with the right leaning K3 tog. I hope this video has been helpful, and thank you very much for watching.